So we're continuing on with our UX design. In the previous project, we created a series of wireframes that essentially just listed out the different functions. And when we created what we called a user flow, we decided that we were going, what are these functions we were going to include on each page. So these are the pages we made. So we need to make sure we have this project open. This is the project we want to have open, and we want to start off by just copying one of the pages here. So I'm just copying the main page, and we're going to create one of these new functions. In this case, this is what's going to occur when we have our new chat. We're going to say we're going to create a new message, or we're going to choose one of our previously made messages. In this case, a pre-existing message here. So let's pull this down here, and we're going to determine what all functions we need with this new window here. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my list of contacts. I'm going to get rid of most of my buttons here. I'll keep these buttons. I'll duplicate these buttons down here, because we can have several things we want to include, and we can use our search bar as the sort of text field. So in this case, we're going to enter in our text here. So just to make sure they know that this is a thing here, we can indicate that we have the ability to add in media. We have the ability to video chat. We want to make sure we have that function available. Photo and media, obviously could be sound, could be data, could be any number of things. Make sure we're centering all this to our buttons. And I'm still using rounded off rectangles. Obviously, if you want to use squares, if you want to use hexagons, if you want to use any number of things, you can. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this. Now, I'm going to eventually settle on a design here, but you have several options when it comes to this. The point isn't for it to look a certain way. The point is to just have it be in a, just to have the options there. So in this case, I'm modeling this more after what I see when I'm looking at the messaging app in another app, like in this other app that I have that has messaging on it. Essentially what it has is it has just everything on one row at the very, very bottom. And so it doesn't have a whole lot of stuff. So you can see as much of the history of your messages as you possibly can. So we're going to resize those and just move this, and I am going to go through several different iterations of this. But as far as like the text box goes, I'm going to keep that relatively the same size, or just maybe like, say for instance, in this case, we'll have 3 of these buttons side by side, and we'll just make sure that we can include the video chat somewhere. We can include our e-commerce somewhere as well, because we want to make sure that we're able to access those as often as we can. So I think I ended up deciding to have like all 3 of these buttons, except for the video chat. I'm going to have the video chat up there at the top, because that's again where I tend to see it. I tend to see it somewhere not in the main area of as far as the chat goes. Okay, so once you have your video chat, again, this is just where I'm placing the stuff. Now, the stuff at the very bottom, that's an option as well. But at this point, we can just sort of give an idea in terms of like the UX design of like what kind of hierarchy we're looking for, what do we want to have like in the forefront here. But let's rethink the design of the bottom of where all our buttons are when it comes to this. But we definitely want to make sure we understand what functions are available in this chat here. So one thing you want to make sure that you're aware of is giving everything it's in alignment here. We want to make sure that everything is sort of organized well. Okay. So with all that done, I'll just get rid of this stuff. Just keep this as spare as possible. Now, for this next bit, we don't really need to be terribly exact about what's going to be happening with our. So to create your text box, generally speaking, you tend to have this sort of sense of completion with the text. We have rounded corners on one side, the side that it's sort of indented from, and then the side where it's aligned to, we tend to have more sharper corners. And then when you have a group of text messages, generally speaking, you have it kind of like complete in terms of like there being a sharp, like a more rounded area on the very top. To kind of give it like the semblance of like, okay, well, this whole thing is like a group of boxes that sort of create one big thing. So I'm just going to duplicate these and reverse them and just change them with a little bit of color here and just rearrange these slightly. Now, whenever you open up your chat, you tend to see the contact name visible as well as their profile picture. So let's go into this main page up here and just in isolation mode, isolate that that contact name. We can just align everything up at the top here. Let's just stick with the normal just filler text, the lorem ipsum text, and we can just center that with each one of these little boxes here. And with the darker boxes, we can change the text to white. So we'll just duplicate the text here, center it to everything, make sure it's consistent. So there always tends to be a differentiation in terms of like, well, just even if you didn't know what side it was on, just by looking at the color, you can tell which one's yours and which one's is from the other person. So we want to make sure we distinguish that. Okay, so we have our new message. We have our different tools here. So let's just double check that we have. So obviously we have video chat. We have our send message as well. We have our in-app purchases, and so we want to make sure we have those visible here. But before we do all that, let's just see what happens when we make a new message, when we send a message here. So I just want to show what this is going to look like. We just want to show our people what this is going to look like whenever we open this up, so we can just kind of see what we're looking at here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this main page here, and we'll just take a look-see at. So we'll go ahead and delete the top here and move everything to the top. And let's create our own little alphabet. So we're going to create a little keypad. So the first thing we're going to need is a little background. So I'm just going to get a rectangle and just make it the same color as the partner text. And then we'll create a little keyboard by simply just making 4 lines of different letters from the keyboard, starting with the numbers. And then just go across the keyboard here. You can make it lowercase, you can make it uppercase. There's the home row. And then the bottom row. And obviously you're going to want to make sure that you leave room for the space bar and a few other things here. So I think I eventually settle on like around 1500 in terms of like the spacing, the tracking for all this. So do your best to line this up. And I'm just going to make little rounded rectangles that are going to fit on each one of these buttons. And once again, you just like alt drag it and then just duplicate that by pressing Control D to duplicate that a couple times. Okay, the last thing we'll do is just copy and paste these into our little user flow here. So just open up your user flow and add these to it. Now in this case, I have I put a little background on each one of these guys, and I just put a little drop shadow on them instead of the border. So you can continue on using the border if you'd like, but I'm going to use this. And I'm going to go ahead and just say, like, if I press new message, or honestly, if I just tap any one of the contacts, you can just sort of see this happening here. So I'll just add the arrows, and then that'll be it. So just add the arrows to put, from new message to each one of these things, each one of these screens here. And yeah, we can kind of go on from there. All right, very cool. Can't wait to see you guys produce. See you in class.